Superheroes have been a part of video games as far back as the original Superman for the Atari 2600. The Man of Steel and DC were repping gaming as far back as the 70s, with Marvel swinging in during the 80s, and every single generation has had their set of heroes to play as in the comfort of your living room. So, how's about something a little different? After all, not all heroes wear Marvel and DC capes. Sometimes it's Flash Gordon the video game, sometimes it's Dark Horse Comics with Hellboy, other times it's Wonder Dog by the developers of Tomb Raider. Yeah, put on the mask, kick on some boots, become bipedal and throw stars? This is the kind of stuff we're talking about today. Who needs Captain America or Wonder Woman when we got Sega's Flash Gal? Look, she's so fast she walks from the Statue of Liberty to the White House in an instant. Superheroes as a concept are so heavily baked into culture all around the world, be they the Mighty Mouses, the masked vigilantes, teams of mutant teenagers, or color-coordinated supergroups with tokusatsu. It makes sense, the idea of an otherworldly hero is universal. And of course, that means there's plenty of video games over several decades that we can dive into. Some great like the Infamous trilogy or your TMNTs, some middle of the road and forgettable, and of course, some of the worst things you've ever played. Justice knows no standard of quality, so as usual, get ready for some stinkers.
So yo, it's Austin, and today we're talking about superhero video games that aren't Marvel and DC, because I've let them commandeer too much of my life. I do want to get into good superhero games from those two at some point, but for today I want to talk about the lesser represented. Which means yes, we've got a lot of heroes and vigilantes to talk about, but before we get started, I've got a word from today's sponsor, Vitcher. These are the brand new Luma series of glasses from Vitcher, and you can use these for AR immersive gaming anytime, anywhere. They can connect to your mobile devices or even full consoles like the Switch 2. The Luma Pro supports a 4K-like display with a full 52-degree field of view. And thanks to the myopia adjustments, it's a nice clear image through and through. I've been trying these new ones out while lounging on the couch while the TV's in use, and sure enough, it'll suck you in. The Lumas are really flexible, and they've got that electrochromatic film so you can darken the edges of the screen in case a room's too bright. And now they've partnered with 8BitDo for the XR mobile controller. You can pop your phone into this thing and get to play in any kind of game you want. And that includes your home consoles with cloud gaming via PS Play or XBX Play. I mean, maybe you want to experience the latest and greatest on a portable 152-inch ultra-vivid screen. Maybe you want to lose yourself in the Tetris dimension, or catch up with your latest TV shows and movies, like really close. The Lumas are also the only XR-compatible glasses for the Switch 2 with the mobile dock, so you can take immersion with you on the go. So Vitcher's teaming up with us to make a deal just for y'all. If you click the link down in the description, you can pick up the brand new Vitcher Luma Pros today. It's a great way to take your gaming library on the go. Pick up the Luma Pro and enhance your gaming today. Thanks to Vitcher for the sponsor, but for now, we need to take it back to the beginning. Superhero video games have been around for like decades, and we might as well take this back as far as we possibly can. Back in the 70s and 80s, making a superhero was as easy as taking like a cute creature, making him a roid monster, and putting on a cape. It seems like the oldest non-licensed superhero video game might be a little title that came out for the Apple II in 1983, Datamost's Super Bunny. Not to be confused with the Rabbit of Kerbanog. You're just a normal bunny who eats what I can only presume is a radioactive carrot to become a Super Bunny. Punch those parasites. The cover, which rules actually, says it came with a comic book, aka 9 pages of lore, and enough internal monologue to rival Daredevil in the 60s. Yeah, not much to see here, but this would be the basis of a lot of these early superhero video games. A person and or animal suddenly getting powers and going off on a wild adventure, sometimes a side-scrolling platformer, most of the times a beat-em-up. Before Wonder Dog, Core Design tried it with Impossible. This came out on several platforms, most of which were not great, but only the TurboGrafx 16 version has the longest slideshow of all time. If you're looking at this guy and thinking, I don't think super strength's enough, don't worry, he's got a gun too. Impossible ain't great. Japanese developers had their fair share of superhero-type games as well. Obviously, Kamen Rider and Ultraman would get a few releases, both still to this day, but it wasn't uncommon for devs to try and do their own thing. Similar to Sega's Flash Gal, Namco's Wonder Momo from 1987 is an interesting one that starts with a parody of the MGM Lion.
She just kind of walks to the side, punching baddies to fill up the wonder meter before transforming into her cooler self and throwing hula hoops. This game is presented like a stage play, and it has a heavier dose of fan service for the time. This was ported a ton, and eventually had a reboot in 2012 with a webcomic and anime by Shifty Look, which was Namco Bandai trying to bring back old franchises. Looking a lot more 2012 than 87 for sure. And I've heard it's not great. There was even a new game by Wave Forward. This only released in Japan and was taken down from mobile stores and never got ported, but it's easy enough to try the APKs online. Anyone play Rent-A-Hero for the Sega Genesis? I didn't, mostly because it didn't get a full fan translation until the last few years. It's also a parody of the superhero genre, and it's on the Sword of Vermilion engine. In this, you play as some dude who dons combat armor as a job, literally a Rent-A-Hero service that you stumble into accidentally. Despite having the appearance of a JRPG, it morphs into a 2D fighter, and if you ask me, it was pretty ahead of its time. It's a shame that this and the remake for the Dreamcast and the canceled port of that to the Xbox never made it stateside because the concept's a winner. There's not many funny JRPGs out there, especially all the way back in 1991, but Yu Suzuki and Sega AM2 took this idea and ran with it. The Dreamcast port also has a fan translation now, and they're both totally worth checking out. Also in 1991, how's about the time Capcom tried to make themselves a proper mascot and turned them into a superhero? Maybe a bit forgotten these days, but I'll never forget
Captain Commando.
For some of us, it seems like you'll be learning about him soon anyway, considering this takes place in 2026. Watch out. Captain Commando is like a lot of games from these days. A beat 'em up, but a Capcom created one, so it's actually really good. Take control of the Cap, or one of his cool friends like a ninja, a baby in a mech, or Mac the Mummy Commando, an alien warrior who is very cool, according to his official lore. I'm pretty sure this baby's dishing out Mayor Hagar dropkicks. Captain Commando is essentially the 90s beat-em-up. So while it doesn't have all of the quality and fanciness that Capcom would eventually get to with like Armored Warriors or Dungeons & Dragons Shadow over Mystara, it's absolutely a staple of this era. Cap's whole deal ended up being a bit of a failure with Capcom themselves, stating that the mascot idea didn't work, and while he's made cameos here and there, this would be his only full video game. Definitely a product of the 90s.
You mean we're never gonna see our mom and dad ever again?
That's right.
Also, I don't know why, but I always got Commando confused with Sonic Blast Man. They're both Japanese takes on the corny Western superhero. They've both got a similar color scheme and a side-scrolling beat-em-up, although one is way better than the other. Taito's Sonic Blast Man didn't start like this, though. He was originally featured in a punching arcade cabinet where you'd punch the thing as hard as you could in order to make, like, an explosion happen on the screen. There's been plenty of versions of this concept, but at some point, Taito decided to team up with developer ITL to bring him to the Super Nintendo, and what we got is one of the slowest paced beat-em-ups of all time. One attack button? You know it. I love that the logo is barely legible, like it's moving away from you. It was a choice. The game itself is alright. Sonic Blast Man is a normal, handsome looking guy that turns into a major goofball when he puts the Death Star on his head. What is this thing? You know, when you take the quarters out of the quarter muncher and instead make a really difficult side scroller for consoles, it loses a bit of the luster. Things did get better in the sequel. Yes, this had a sequel, Sonic Blast Man 2, with an even less legible logo. But at least you know every waking moment you'll be raging a superpowered war to
Fighting for freedom!
Sonic Blast Man 2 is a massive step up from the original. We've got 3 characters, Blaster himself, Sonya, and Captain Choyer, who is not Guile. This one's faster paced, it's got co-op, the levels have more variety, aren't as long-winded, the abilities you have extend to 2 buttons, and it's overall a better time. I'd still say Captain Commando's the superior beat-em-up of these 2 goofy-looking superheroes, but it's certainly not worth the current going price of $230 for a loose copy. If anything, SBM2's a great time with a friend if you're in that wacky retro beat 'em up kind of mood. But you know what no one's ever in the mood for? And I don't say that lightly. It's been over 30 years now, and I still don't know how Boogerman, a pick and flick adventure, was made. It's crazy to think Interplay put this out, and then the original Fallout a mere 2 years later. I just remember watching the commercials as a kid.
You'd have an atomic butt blast too, Boogerman for Sega Genesis.
When it comes to the 90s and vibes, this is the quintessential video game. Mario ain't got nothing on that. Boogerman is self-explanatory, and I'm about to say a whole lot of words, so get ready. You play as a dude called Snotty Ragsdale, visiting Professor Stinkbomb's lab on top of Takey Dump. He's working on some world-ending device that'll teleport things to the Dimension Excrement, but something's gone wrong with the Snotrium 357, so it's up to billionaire Snotty and his alter ego Boogerman to save the day. There's really no way to talk about this now or then even without pointing out the obvious that yeah, gross out humor was in the 90s. I mean, like, this was the funniest thing ever, dude. We all knew, if not were, the type of kid back then who would hear a fart and start clapping. And thankfully that kid be hearing an eternal onslaught of farts because everything shits on impact. And don't forget the occasional, and I don't think you'll be able to convince anyone under the age of 25 that Boogerman is actually kind of an underappreciated gem, but the reviews from the time reflect that. It's clear when you're playing, especially the Sega Genesis original, that a ton of love was put into it. Old Booger's got a lot of animation frames, the music takes full advantage of the Genesis sound chip, and functionally, it's a solid video game. Disgusting, yes, considering you're just throwing nose dirt at people, farting out fireballs, and the whole kitchen sink of nasty body functions. Boogerman would make an appearance in Clay Fighter 63 1/3 as Earthworm Jim's rival. That'd be that for Boogs. There was a Kickstarter campaign for an HD sequel that failed to hit its goal, a Steam Greenlight campaign in 2013, but that wouldn't become a reality either. I'm not so sure there's much demand for Boogerman, but if you can stomach it, it's not bad at all. More of a why. I'm not gonna say it's something I'd recommend because, I mean, look at it. But I will say Boogerman, a pick and flick adventure, is one of the video games of all time.
Whoever smelt it, dealt it.
I wonder what the world looks like where Boogerman becomes a massive hit, like with a full TV show, a comic book, and something that's celebrated for generations with its own cinematic universe. Well, speaking of franchises, there's a ton of licensed superheroes that aren't tied to Marvel and DC that also have video games. For instance, Kick-Ass 2.
You skinny ass scumbag.
Wow, that is somehow worse than I imagined. Kick-Ass the game was pretty bad, but Kick-Ass 2 the game is somehow worse. Take Batman Arkham Asylum, but replace it with a guy who is definitely Aaron Taylor Johnson.
If you're here, it's because you know who I am. Kick-Ass, the first real superhero and all that crap.
You punch dudes surrounding you in a circle as they wait their turn while you break their arms, and then slowly unleash on them as they have 1 or 2 sound bites for getting hit that they will use every single time. There's little animated still cutscenes in between levels with an art style that is definitely not John Romita Jr.'s work. Instead, we get Battle Guy looking like Bobby Hill in riot gear. I guess he kind of looked like that in the movie too.
That's my purse! I don't know you!
Also, I don't know who did this fun little prank, but the wiki and IMDb both say that Kick-Ass was voiced by Yuri Lowenthal, Matt Mercer, Eric Baza, and let us not forget Zelda Williams as Mother Russia. Who did this? Hit Girl is absolutely not Chloe Grace Moretz.
I managed to get one of them to talk, although he's going to need a lot less black nail polish now that I've ripped off 3 of his fingers.
Jesus.
There's plenty of licensed superhero video games though. It actually goes all the way back to the very first costumed superhero, the Phantom. Dude started out in a daily newspaper strip in the 30s and has gone on to this day. It's kind of wild to think that a comic written in the 30s would last long enough to get video games that would be seen by the original creator, but that'd be the case with Phantom 2040. Technically a spin-off show, Phantom 2040 tells the story of our world in tatters after the resource wars from the 21st century. Our only hope for survival is the ghost jungle, and it's up to Kit Walker Jr., the 24th Phantom, hence 2040, to save the world. Kind of a darker kids cartoon for the mid-90s, but hey, seems like people like this one. The video game is actually pretty dope. The Super Nintendo version at least. The Game Gear one is, well, this one here is a platformer developed by Viacom New Media, and it's like really similar to a Metroidvania way before that term was coined. You've got your standard attacks, which will grow over time, different weapons, and a whole loadout to pick from in the menu. Phantom's got lots of maneuverability options with his grappling hook that you can swing from, and somehow they managed to fit over 20 endings into this thing. It's pretty ambitious for the era.
Okay!
Play Phantom 2040 from Viacom New Media.
I assume this whole world is the after effects of Captain Commando. So let's go back in time to the year 2025 for another Phantom video game, simply the Phantom.
There's the strength
strength of 10 tigers.
Oh yeah! You know what I love? Jank-ass beat-em-ups. And recently released Phantom is that for days. If you like a thwack or a crunchy punch, this one's got them in spades. Play as the Phantom or Diana, his fearless wife, on a world-spanning journey through several levels. Just make sure to read the useful, informative tooltips on the loading screens, like, no one likes to get hit in the nose. Old jungle saying. What? I like the visual style they went for. It has that comic book look while keeping the frames low so it doesn't look too uncanny. The gameplay isn't outstanding, but it's got a little bit of that charm you won't get anywhere else. Just don't be afraid to whip out the pistols and a corny one-liner.
Its cold fury chills even tiger's blood.
If I were to tackle every single licensed superhero video game out there, we'd be here all day. Hellboy's had his fair share of video games, most recently Hellboy Web of Word, a roguelike beat-em-up that plays like Evil West or God of War. A really cool idea with a fantastic style that really captures the vibe of that world. Older games like Hellboy Dogs of Night do not do that. Same story with Spawn, whose minigames we've talked about, some with the coolest intro ever, like In the Demon's Hand. Let us never forget. Then you boot up something like Spawn the Eternal, where he looks like Venom standing up because they didn't want to animate the cape. Dude's got a tank control platformer and a terrible 2D fighter in one. Somehow, this was developed and published by Sony Interactive Studios America, who brought us the first two Twisted Metals, so I have no idea how this happened. But they can't all be zingers. The Mask, The Tick, Judge Dredd, Darkwing Duck, Astro Boy, platformers everywhere. You can avoid Darkwing on the TurboGrafx though. Kamen Rider's been popping out games for decades. Heck, you can even play Pixar's The Incredibles if you really want. But I want to talk about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, my favorite superhero squad as a kid. You know who has a pretty decent track record? These radical heroes in a half shell. Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael have been around for so long with so many different iterations that the phrase TMNT was best when I was a kid has like 6 different interpretations, and I love that. We're also lucky that a vast majority of the games are decent to great. I didn't play Turtles in Time as a kid because I had a Genesis, so it was all about Hyperstone Heist. Yeah, that's how it sounded to me. Weird, right? Hyperstone Heist was basically Konami's version of that for the Sega Genesis. It had less levels, but they were longer. It was tougher. To me, this was the beat-em-up that defined my generation of the Turts, and I can sit back and play this through any day of the week. It's like Gunstar Heroes or Rocket Knight Adventures, where I'll slap it on the TV, suddenly an hour's gone, and dopamine go up. So let's look at some modern stuff. TMNT Shredder's Revenge is perfect. Tribute Games is really good at what they do, and a 6-player beat-em-up starring every American kid's childhood super team is a recipe for a win. They took a lot of inspiration from those Konami titles and made something that may have been the best of them, that may be a legit 10 out of 10. If you haven't played Shredder's Revenge, get yourself 2 to 5 friends and get on it, because I think beat-em-ups might peak with this, at least until Scott Pilgrim EX and Marvel Cosmic Invasion come out. If anyone's listening, please put Cosmic Ghost Rider in this. He's perfect for it. What happens when you combine Hades and TMNT? You get Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate, a co-op action roguelike that is way more fun than you'd think. If you hadn't heard of it, it's because it was one of those Apple Arcade exclusives that escaped containment, has slowly gotten updates over time, and become a pretty decent multiplayer experience. You've got the 4 turtles and Casey Jones to play as, the upgrade systems have a little bit of depth, and the gradual unlocks feel good as you go. When I originally played this, I thought it was just okay, but the several updates and existence of crossplay on a little game like this go a long way, provided you aren't cursed with that NSO connection. And one more for the licensed heroes. If we're talking about TMNT, you know I gotta also bring up the Power Rangers. Super Sentai and Rangers video games are a bit of a mixed bag. There's some decent stuff. The old Super Nintendo games are alright. Battle for the Grid is surprisingly okay, and Rita's Rewind seems serviceable. So instead, how's about a little history lesson? This is the Apple Pippin.
Pippin,
Once upon a time, Apple and Bandai teamed up to try and make a video game console. The Pippin, spelled P-I-P-P N, and frankly this thing sucked. It had a decent amount of video games, most of which were Japanese exclusive, but the Western release only supported 6. So if you were like one of those big Mr. Potato Head Saves Veggie Valley fans, you were in line day 1. But this is about the Power Rangers, so say hello to Power Rangers Zeo vs. the Machine Empire. Let's freaking go! I'm playing the PC port, which is something I assume you could find on the floor of a Circuit City. This is this is wild. Developed by Cyberflix, the folks who brought us Titanic Out of Time, Power Rangers Zeo vs. the Machine Empire is 9 levels of batshit insane action, horribly designed stages, and a life system that makes no sense. Do you want to do an attack? Well, you best be okay with it moving you backwards. In fact, jumping, punching, most things you do have animations that'll move you backwards. So platforming looks a whole lot like this. Each stage has you collecting enough crystals to fill up this meter on the top left, a lot of which are tucked away and difficult to find. You don't get access to your power weapons until halfway, and it's super easy to die in a moment's notice. You miss a jump, that ranger is dead, and you'll have to wait for them to res, which just kinda happens arbitrarily, meaning you're just throwing dudes at the wall until something sticks. Also, sometimes an enemy will just demolish your health. I'm not even mad. This is hilarious. This is the prime Kasuge I've been searching for. It's perfect. It's a shame my favorite of the Zeo Rangers, the gold one, who I dressed up for Halloween as, is locked behind later levels because there's no way I could beat this without losing my mind. All in all, the next time someone tries to convince you that some bona fide 6 or 7 out of 10 video game is trash, just show them this. Let's hop forward to today, or the late 2000s and 2010s. The 90s version of the superhero was so mainstream and oversaturated that it nearly killed off the entire industry. And when the turn of the century came, they decided to generally make things a little more dark and edgy. A lot of writers were doing a more meta or even nuanced take on the genre, which was the kind of things that you saw with Prototype and Infamous.
2 very different games that get compared all the time. The original Prototype and Infamous came out 2 weeks apart and suffer from the twin films phenomenon, where people will draw comparisons between the two no matter the circumstances. Kinda like The Prestige and The Illusionist, or Observe and Report and Paul Blart Mall Cop. The main difference being both Infamous and Prototype are really solid video games. Sucker Punch's Infamous has you in the shoes of Cole McGrath, and it's all about the karma system, something that was popular at the time. You do good, you get blue, red means bad. What kind of superpowered human would you be? Fresh off the Sly Cooper trilogy, Infamous draws a lot of similarities to its movement systems while embracing the power side, essentially having Cole run around and use lightning and electricity to do all sorts of stuff. You are more grounded with your movement, centered around climbing, parkour, and floating with static electricity. Really? This was about as close as we got to a Static Shock video game. It's a certified classic, but also it's the worst of its franchise because Infamous 2 and Second Son are even better. Anyone else get the Infamous 2 Hero Edition with a sling bag? That thing owned. 2 takes place in a city similar to New Orleans, Second Son was the big budget brother on the PlayStation 4 and a mock version of Seattle, and Delson is such a fun main character. No notes. Infamous is great. Sony, port the first 2 to the PS5. I don't want to stream it. Prototype, on the other hand, by Radical Entertainment, has you in control of one Alex Mercer, a shapeshifter who's fighting against a crazy outbreak, and the military. Infamous can get dark and edgy, but Prototype is dark and edgy. Throughout the course of the game, you see Manhattan being slowly overthrown by a virus called Blacklight. You'll see little percentage numbers pop up as everything gets worse and worse. You'll also be doing a whole lot of impaling and soul sucking, and the hero part of the story is questionable at best. Moving around in this game's a ton of fun. You can do all sorts of crazy stuff, and scaling buildings is always a good time. If Infamous is Sonic, Prototype and its sequel are Shadow the Hedgehog. Prototype sold over 2 million copies. Prototype 2 got decent sales too, although not as high. Both games got tie-in comics, one by DC, another by Dark Horse, but for some reason Activision took a good look at the dev after and went to the Destiny mines, and nowadays they're just a support studio. A sad state to a developer who made so many
many bangers. Infamous was kind of its own thing with movement and world exploration, but Prototype took a lot from like Ultimate Spider-Man and most definitely Microsoft's Crackdown. What happens when you take Captain America, give him a gun, even more roids, and set him free into an open world? You get Crackdown, aka the $60 Halo 3 demo disc, one of my favorite Xbox 360 exclusives. Crackdown is simply so much fun. It's a game where you get gradually more superpowered as it goes along. It follows a formula similar to Mercenaries or Just Cause, where you have a list of targets to topple, and you'll do so in this open world by any means necessary. Sure, it's super janky, the performance is a little crappy by 2025 standards, and the story is practically non-existent. The characters are whatever, and it can be super repetitive, but it also feels like the developer, Real-Time Worlds, took a PlayStation 2 idea, upscaled it, threw in some online co-op, and said, enjoy yourself. It just works. Crackdown and its first sequel are worth a shake. Make sure to download the Crackdown 2 Windows Phone map app, baby. It's got Bing. It's a shame that Real-Time's next and final game was APB. It feels weird calling Saints Row 4 a superhero video game, but I mean, yeah, look at it. This whole franchise kept escalating in its wackiness until suddenly you're the president of the United States. Where do you go from there? You know, a space station with Mass Effect romance parodies and a simulation of Steelport with superpowers. Crackdown, Prototype, Infamous, and Saints Row 4 all occupied the same space in my brain of big playgrounds where you can do a lot of dumb things in the world, but Saints Row 4 definitely has a mixed reaction from the fan base. I haven't played a lot of 4, but I sure have played a lot of Gravity Rush. That's right, I'm calling it a superhero game. The power's just, of course, gravity. Also known as Gravity Days in Japan, you control Kat, a girl with amnesia, who has the power to alter the flow of gravity around her, which leads to some wild gameplay. Originally released on the PlayStation Vita and escaping containment a few years later to the PlayStation 4, Gravity Rush is one of the best releases that Sony's put out in the last decade. This game bleeds charm. You've got a variety of challenges to do and feats of heroism to do for others in the city of Hexville, all while using gravity as the main mechanic, which means everyone's getting a flying kick. On the Vita, you'd move the whole thing around to aim and throw Kat into whatever direction you were pointing in. Maybe a bit disorienting at first, but you'll quickly get the hang of things, and suddenly you're listening to an incredible set of tunes while floating through this bizarre world, reading comic book strip sequences for the story, and meeting all sorts of wonderful characters. I really like this one, and the follow-up, Gravity Rush 2, I might like more. The world was bigger, there's a lot more of the fictional language voice acting, things are brighter, the soundtrack's even larger, NPCs flood certain areas in huge numbers, your rival character from the first game, Raven, has a way bigger part, and really, there's nothing else like it. There's even a Nier collab, because there's always a Nier collab, why not? Gravity Rush 1 and 2 are bona fide superhero-adjacent classics, and it is an absolute shame that Japan Studio went defunct. After those games, the superhero genre became way more reserved for licensed IPs from, Marvel and DC. I feel like it's very rare we see something non-indie come out sporting caped crusaders and masked vigilantes. But indie or not, whenever something does come out, it's usually pretty bizarre. Like, say a dating simulator fused with Picross. Pixel Puzzle Makeout League? What? I'm a Picross addict. If you take one look at my Switch and sort it by most played, a majority of them are Picross, and the only thing that's prevented me from playing Pixel Puzzle Makeout League wasn't the fact that it's a Picross Otome game, it's that Picross has 5 and Kimono friends had taken over my life. Dating superheroes and solving puzzles. Sounds like a good formula. What can I say? I like making pictures out of squares and numbers. I really love seeing the superhero represented in all sorts of genres throughout the decades, like with 1994's Superhero League of Hoboken, a post-apocalyptic adventure role-playing game. Move over Justice League, the citizens and mostly useless superheroes of New Jersey are here to fight against the mutant invasion. As you can tell from the box art and just looking at the thing, Hoboken is a goofy game that's considered a hidden gem these days. It's kind of like if Mystery Men took place inside of Berkeley Shut Up and Jam Gaiden, and that's a Venn diagram that'll excite 20 people. The writing's solid, if a bit early 90s, usually pretty funny, and Legend Entertainment deserves credit for making something out of left field. You can actually snag this on Steam and GOG for pretty cheap if you get a taste for the olds. And speaking of that, Hero X. Let's go. Hero X by Amazing Games and Infogrames, which just sounds like a winning combination, is an isometric action RPG where you play as a superhero, or technically a sidekick chosen by the American Superheroes Association, which looks to be a glorified internship. You're assigned to defend small town, and you do so by pointing and clicking, pointing and clicking. I'm noticing a distinct lack of superpowers. Hero X lets you create a character at the beginning and pick some powers out, but they're all very basic and use a mana type of system, so you aren't really feeling the super of the hero so much as I can fire a fireball sometimes. Anyways, check out this music. Yo, whoever threw the drums down on the stock track went hard. It's got ghost notes for days. I love this idea, but the execution is really bad. It seems like a lot of superhero games fall into parody and comedy, because that was their perception in the mainstream for a significant part of the 90s and 2000s, and this doesn't do much to escape that. Interacting with random NPCs will result in ridiculous lines like, "I want to play with trucks," and "I travel a lot." Great conversation, bro. This one's just a lot of mindless punching. No strategy, it's not a cult hit, just Hero X, a game I had to run a virtual Windows 98 setup for because I thought it was gonna be a little more interesting. This one's not great, but you know, it probably didn't help that Freedom Force came out half a year earlier.
So many questions, and so few answers. Until now, dear viewers. Until now.
I've been hearing about Freedom Force and its sequel, Freedom Force versus the Third Reich, for years, but I never took the leap. Developed by Irrational Games, the people behind BioShock and System Shock 2, which is really funny to think about, Freedom Force is basically the good version of Hero X. It is, as you can see, a strategy RPG, one running on NetImmerse, the same engine as Morrowind and Dark Age of Camelot. Rather than creating your own character though, you get to play as the mostly unseen mentor who gathers a legion of goofballs to save the world from Lord Dominion. Freedom Force is campy, but it's got a lot of depth. It's like Baldur's Gate, but with vigilantes, one of which is literally called Minuteman. It's a cult classic made on a now shoestring budget of $2 million, has a ton of accolades, and it's still kinda playable on modern systems with some patches, because Windows XP was the best. It even had its own comic book spin-off published by Image. The sequel in 2005, Versus the Third Reich, was more of the same, cleaned up with a bunch of quality of life additions, and frankly, both of these are way too much to talk about for a video like this. The community for these games were active as well, and Irrational released a set of tools for people to make custom campaigns. There's even an unofficial expansion, Freedom Force X. It does take a decent amount of work to get running perfectly on modern systems, but it is hard to argue against their regular sale prices of
$1.24.
That's less than a normal ass crunchy taco now. If you like RPGs, try this one out.
Where can we go for lunch that won't cost a fortune?
I have no idea.
Let's get wackier. There's a lot of Japanese releases, one of which everyone knows. Beautiful Joe is like, yeah, obviously one of the biggest superhero video games out there. This side-scrolling beat 'em up by Clover, which, welcome back Clovers, by the way, was their debut at Capcom, and it holds up. I think all 4 of the Beautiful Joe games are worth trying out, but both the internet and I have talked about them all to death. I hear a lot less chatter about Captain Rainbow, which makes sense as it was a Nintendo Wii Japanese exclusive. Developed by Skip, who brought us Chibi Robo, Captain Rainbow is about a guy named Nick trying to fulfill the wishes of Nintendo characters. It's more of an adventure title where you run back and forth doing errands as your yo-yo spinning alter ego, Captain Rainbow, and despite decent reviews, it just didn't make the mark, selling a very small 22,682 copies lifetime overseas, which is a drop in the bucket. Thankfully, there is an English fan translation for those who want to give it a shot, and I think it's worth it to see what obscure Nintendo characters pop up. Y'all remember Mappo from Gift Pia? How about Hikari from Shin Onigashima? Yeah, I can see why we didn't get this. Did anyone play Chroma Squad? Chroma Squad, inspired by Saban's Power Rangers trademark because they were threatened with a lawsuit. Anyways, this indie studio that raised less than $100,000 on Kickstarter went full tokusatsu parody and follows a set of actors who were fired from that gig and then decide to create their own show with blackjack and hookers. So you do that by playing the manager role, upgrading your studio, your little actor, slotting them into roles, and essentially making a tactical RPG out of filming a TV show. It's a brilliant little concept, concept, one of those fun older indies that hits Steam that is absolutely worth playing. You gotta hold up those ratings. Truthfully, there's a lot of smaller games in this category without much to mention. Zack Zero is one of those PlayStation 3 digital exclusive ROMs that I played for an hour without feeling a single thing. You're just a dude named Zack who has every power at the same time, like a 5-year-old came up with the concept. Reviews from the time probably reflect my 2 sentences. Undefeated is a free release on Steam that was basically the what if Superman was an Unreal 5 meme you see on social media, but it's actually pretty well made, mostly a sandbox of destruction. Cyber Citizen Shockman is a trilogy of releases on the TurboGrafx 16 and CD about a duo transforming to save the day. They all feel totally different, and for some reason the second one, A New Menace, the fusion of Star Wars Episode 1 and 4, is a Mega Man clone. This one actually hit the States on the TurboGrafx as simply Shockman. And speaking of clones, how about that crazy Drake? Where have I seen this before? Oh, Earthworm Jim, that's right.
Groovy!
Did I just f Dracula? Also, what's with the cover? It's just Duke Nukem 3D. We can't just be ripping off all the things, y'all. All was peaceful in Ducktropolis. Yeah, you know the spiel. It's not terrible, but why you'd play this over Earthworm Jim is a mystery. Sentinels of the Multiverse is a game adaptation of the tabletop co-op card game that's kinda similar to Dominion and other deck builders. Then there's UFO Kamen Yakisoban, an advert game for the Super Famicom about an instant yakisoba noodle superhero featuring this guy. Nissan Foods went all in on Yakisoban. Dude had a direct to VHS movie, a theme song by Hironobu Kageyama too. This one was actually a raffle prize giveaway for noodles and was eventually sold in stores. It's also not great. So goes the story of the advert game. Super noodle powers or not. So we got one more game to talk about, and I think it's something that's gone under the radar. It's weird as heck, it's not licensed, it's made by a developer who was a staple of the Xbox Live Indie Arcade days, Comic Jumper. Twisted Pixel Games sure was great in the early 2010s. You might know them by a few of their indies like The Maw, Explosion Man, The Gunstringer, or maybe the super unfortunate Xbox One launch title Loco Cycle. But before that, in 2010, they made a 360 exclusive that was a love letter to comics and video games with a little title called Comic Jumper: The Adventures of Captain Smiley. The concept is simple. You play as the titular hero, someone whose comic books were, well, pretty bad. So of course he decides to fight against the critics and learn about what makes graphic novels good with the power of Twisted Pixel Games. Like, actually, he busts out and is like, hey, can we make this work? The end result is this insane mishmash of visual styles and a live action camera a la AMP3, and it's genuinely funny. I mean, real laugh out loud haha funny, not a Vegeta smirker too. And speaking of, Chris Sabat plays as Captain Smiley and your abrasive Midori no Hibaified sidekick Star, so it just sounds like Vegeta's trash talking the entire time.
Search for the scoundrel who took the life of our king. Oh, you mean this guy? Bad man. Isn't this a little ridiculous? Yeah, the tribes have probably made peace and came together to destroy you. We're killing one of their own, remember? Now that you're a medallion, I'm so tossing you off a cliff.
I've got a soft spot for real ass people suddenly appearing on screen, and Comic Jumper spares no expense. Got a super attack, watch a bunch of fists appear, and then a guy headbutts the screen. When I said Twisted Pixel was helping out, I meant it. The gameplay itself is a bit of a mixed bag. It's mostly a twin stick shooter with a mix of melee combat here and there. For what was 1,200 Microsoft points at launch in 2010, I didn't expect too much depth. However, it was absolutely a standout against other digital-only releases back then. As you get further into it, Captain Smiley's hopping between dimensions that are all stylized differently. There's the Conan world, the Silver Ages of comics, its original style, and even a shoujo manga level, even if that is wildly how to draw manga and the most American South Park interpretation ever. It does have issues. Some levels go on for way too long. It can be repetitive and not in the fun Dynasty Warriors way. Some bits of humor don't land, others are kind of annoying, but most of it does. I mean, what is this billboard? Laser background school photos or child abuse? What? Comic Jumper: The Adventures of Captain Smiley isn't perfect, but it sure is a gem from an era that doesn't exist anymore. I'm glad Twisted Pixel and Microsoft ported this to the Xbox Series, but hopefully they can slap it on Steam one of these days. More people need to see the Christopher Sabat interview.
People love seeing me eat.
So there you have it, a bunch of superhero video games that aren't... I'm not saying it anymore. Enough is enough. Did I miss anything? Let me know down in the comments below. And for now, I'm gonna boot up Power Rangers Zeo and force somebody to play it, because there's nothing quite like watching someone else experience true Kusoge. If you liked today's video, check out the sponsor Vitcher, or head on over to the Patreon and become a backer. You can also buy a t-shirt over at the Pixel Empire, do the clicking of all the things, and hey, thanks for watching. Anywho, I've been Austin. Catch you next time when we talk about a bunch of good video games for a change. Bye-bye. Thank you all so much for watching. Special Patreon shout out to Benna Oswald, Blackfoot Ferret, Blake Thomas, Cheeks, Cloric Fox, Chris Shelton, DX, Buster, Dylan Snyder, Fragile Traveler, Hey Quiggles, J Roos, Jackie G, Jacoby Fitzpatrick, Kevin Zanowski, Nocturnal Nix, Pierre, Platinum Rose, Pachabear, Rare Find It, and Vox. Thank you all so much for your generous support. Hey, guess what? I can't stop talking about superheroes, but at least I took it away from the capes. Kinda. There's still capes here. I am not kidding when I said I'm addicted to Picross, by the way. I gotta Switch 2 and I've already put like 40 hours into Squeakross, so God help me.